A brand new investigation into the deadly mass shooting near the Riverwalk.
Tonight, a state agency is looking at who was served alcohol at Ventura and what led up to the shooting. Tomorrow, a vigil is planned for one of the two people killed.
Eyewitness News reporter Henry Ramos shares what Ventura is saying in its first statement since the shooting.
A stillness looms at Ventura Bar. A stillness that was shattered Sunday night. 7 people were shot, 2 of them were killed. Tonight, Ventura staff say they are shaken, in disbelief, and devastated.
No violence in their history, that we're aware of.
Major Mark Min is with the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission.
When we do these breach investigations, it's a very comprehensive look at what occurred up until the incident.
The state agency is launching its own investigation into the Riverwalk Bar, separate from San Antonio police.
Was there any indication that violence was going to break out? Was there any indication that there was going to be an assault or anything like that? And if so, was anything done to prevent it?
In the crown of chaos were teenagers. 4 of the 7 victims were 19 or younger. Min says TABC investigators will be looking at surveillance video and speaking to witnesses.
We look at maybe whether people were overserved, whether there were underage people being served, being allowed to consume alcohol.
While the bar's future is uncertain, staff say it will involve recovery and healing.
Henry joins us live downtown. Henry, has the bar been in trouble with TABC before?
Deborah, Min says that Ventura had complaints in the past about possibly over-serving customers and serving minors. He says his investigators have been here several times in the past year. No history of violence. Now, in terms of this investigation, depending on the outcome here, we're looking at possibly paying a fine or suspending its permit. Reporting live downtown, Henry Ramos, KENS 5 Eyewitness News.